Valve's slide deck from GDC was leaked, I guess. I don't know if it was really leaked, but that's what I heard. It was leaked. In it, you're going to find a few interesting things that I thought that we would talk about. Valve gave devs some tips on how to make their games work best on Valve hardware. I think that stuff's interesting. They mentioned that they're working on anti-cheat, which was one of Valve's biggest hurdles, and they explained how their verified system is going to work on the new hardware, as well as what I think is the best part of it. Valve asked developers specifically to be sure to optimize their games for lower spec machines. So my question to you guys is, did you take a look at the things that we've seen from GDC from Valve, although we haven't seen like the actual talk or anything? And what of those things that I just mentioned stands out to you? Carrie, what did you think?
So I did see a few things. There's a number of people showing off pictures of the Steam machine itself, marveling at how small it was. We got a little bit more information on Steam Frame itself. There is some interesting information from Steam Frame along with those same lines of like what is going to be like Steam Frame verified to run PC games on Steam Frame. So we have that as well. All of them seem to be like fine, because I think that what they were saying for is basically that they're targeting like 1080p generally speaking. So there, even that 4K 30 has gotten pulled back a bit, it seems. So that was what I heard, and I think that is overall a more conservative like thing that they should be saying overall based on what it is. And then the Steam Frame one, I think is kind of a little bit more interesting, because the Steam Frame, they say to be Steam Frame verified to run games like the PC side of things, or even just whatever on the Steam Frame, if it's VR, is that it has to hit 90 hertz, meaning the game has to hit 90 FPS. So if you look at it through that angle, Quest 3 doesn't have this requirement. So even though their spec bump on the Steam Frame is a bit better than the Quest 3, there may be instances where the Quest 3 will look better because it can go at lower frame rate. So it's kind of like a weird, I don't want to say weird, but I think their particular method of frame rate and everything else as a Paramount is the correct choice, even if it does mean reduced visuals and other stuff. So there are some interesting stuff, but it there's a bunch of things. And I also read one thing was like, I don't know if it was said tongue in cheek or if they were saying it was like, they're kind of like, hey, if you know anyone that has RAM for sale, let us know.
Right.
And that's like, oof. I hope that was just a joke.
I think it probably, I mean, I don't think anybody in their audience that was sitting there, they're a bunch of game developers. They weren't really asking those people, but even if it is a joke, there's a whole lot of truth to it. Like they definitely are looking for RAM.
Like Rodney Dangerfield up there. If you know anyone with a RAM, let us know. Just sweating.
That's right. Or what's the meme with, oh my God, what's his name?
The Resident Evil 4? Oh no, I was thinking of something else. Run into a guy that's like, "What you buying?"
Y'all got any more of that? And then it's whatever. Dave Chappelle. Thank you.
Yeah. Y'all got any more of that good stuff?
Yes, great. Yes, great.
Yeah. So I mean, I think 90 hertz is probably the best thing, because that is going to cut down on people having motion sickness. I think. Yeah.
There's lots of reasons.
The higher the frame rate. What'd you say, Carrie?
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's the fidelity of it for optics-wise, where people are looking at it's going to minimize as much motion sickness as possible, and that is paramount for anything else, regardless of visuals. So I think the choice that they're making, especially for it to be a verified game for a VR game, is the correct choice, even though some people may have some misgivings about it.
So that 90 hertz thing, I didn't see that in the slide deck. Where did you get that number?
That was from a side topic that happened because I was following a bunch of different news, and it was like a bunch of disjointed stuff from people. Most of the people that I saw were just talking about the 1080p 60 type of stuff, 1080p 30 type of stuff from the Steam machine, talking about how small it was. Some people are like, hey, it's kind of cute that Valve put a PC inside of a power supply, because, it's basically a power supply dimensions. So it's like stuff like that. And, yeah, so I was just like a bunch of different stuff coming into my feed that I was just picking up. I don't remember which one it was, but I do remember someone explicitly talking about that particular issue.
It's actually on, I can't see what page I'm on. It's on page 28 of their slides. I must have scrolled past it. You're right. It says standalone VR title. So that means if you're playing on the device itself, 90 frames per second.
Correct.
And then standalone 2D titles, 30 frames per second at 1280 by 720p, which standalone 2D titles means you're playing a game on this, but you're not hooked up to anything, but it's not a VR game. It's just a regular ass, like what VR people call flat games.
Yeah, they call it, I think that's the whole frame business.
Right.
You watch it, you see it in a frame.
Yeah. So, Russ, what did you think about these slides? Did you have a chance to scroll through them? And if not, let me know and I'll go ahead.
No, I did. And, it's really just the kind of just going back and like validating some of the thoughts I've already had, and that like the Steam Machine in particular, they're saying that for their verified program, 1080p, 30 frames per second. And it's not, they obviously were saying, oh, it's going to be able to do 4K 60 with, upscaling and whatnot as like the promotion part of it. But what they're saying is if it wants to be verified with the machine, that's the minimum standard. And I think that's fine. And I really like that a lot of this, the slide deck is talking about, it's funny, I almost said Steam Deck instead of slide deck, but what I reading in this slide deck is like, yes, optimize for lower power stuff. You know what I mean? And it's going to, and I think it's in the very last slide that they say, let me pull it up. It says optimizing for lower spec machines expands your audience. I love that. Like it just, pushing towards affordability as opposed to just like latest and greatest is just a really kind of neat thing. This is probably the right forum for that too at GDC, it's game developers and be like, hey, make sure you're not trying to push to the latest and greatest. And so I really appreciate that stuff. That's really my big takeaway is it's like validation, like, like Valve and I are like in sync, in terms of just the thought process of who we should be targeting in terms of a main audience. So love it. That's really it.
Yeah. Rudy, anything to add to this?
I just want to give them my money. That's it. I want it. No, I was looking at the slides and like I do agree with Russ. I think that one of the things that very, very early on when they announced the specs and everything that people pointed out was like, this is looking at the median, not the high end, but what most of the people are using in their active rigs right now with the Steam survey. So it would make sense that they would go for the widest audience possible in the PC space when it came to the specs and the capabilities of this device. I do like the fact that there's a little bit more, how can I say this, detail in terms of the verification process. I do think that the verification process for the Steam Deck itself, there have been some instances where a game will say, we're Steam verified. And then you play it and it's just like, whoa, this is not as smooth as I would expect for something like this. With 1080, 30 being the bare minimum in terms of performance, that does allow for expansion. Also, we got to remember, this is, what was it? 8 times more powerful, if I remember correctly, or is it 9 times more powerful? 6 times more powerful than the Steam Deck. The sky's the limit, I feel like. It's going to be, the question that remains is still price, but I'm excited for it, man.
Yeah. A second ago, I forgot what point I was going to make. You mentioned something and I was going to say something, but now I've forgotten it, but that's okay. I think that I love that they are saying, don't, optimize for low spec hardware. Not everybody's going to be able to upgrade. We've talked about this in the past, how developers are already, even without Valve saying something, starting to say, well, I don't know, when we ship our game in 2 years, originally we thought people would have hardware that could do this. Well, now I think maybe people are going to have hardware that can do this instead. And so we're going to have to scale back what we want our hardware to do. And I think it's good that they're doing that. And if more developers do that, everybody, whether you have good hardware or whether you have old hardware, everybody's going to get the payoff from that. And that's exactly what Valve said. They said, what's the words that you used, Russ? I'm trying to find it. Expand your audience.
Right.
Optimizing for lower spec machines expands your audience. I think that's a good idea. Now, there's going to be people. This is my question. When you look at this, they specifically said 30 frames per second. They specifically said 90 frames per second. Up until in the customer facing information, they never say that stuff. And if you look at the customers facing information for the Steam Deck, they just say playable frame rate. But then if you go into, what's it called, Steamworks or whatever, that the developers look at, like the recommendations from Valve, they do say a frame rate, but they never tell the customers that. Why do you guys think that is, Russ?
I think it's this is probably pushing towards like setting a standard for the developers, but for a user, I don't. The problem is that if a user gets a game and it goes below that, even for a second, they're going to be like, oh, I want my money back. This is a lie or whatever. Like there's all of that investment part of it. I'm not saying they're wrong, like it's okay to expect, a certain level of performance, but that investment into it, it's very hard to make a guarantee at that point. Like, hey, the developer and us, like we all came together, kumbaya, and we decided this thing is going to play at 30 frames per second and then it runs at 29 and then everyone loses their stuff. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking in terms of just why it's not customer facing. It's just because of the investment that a customer has versus telling a developer, you need to target this, you should be able to get this majority of the time, then we'll give you the standard and I don't know, let the rest kind of suss itself out.
That makes sense. All right. Well, you know what? Let us know what you guys think of Valve's comments at GDC down below in the comments. This was just a small part of my podcast, the Nerd Nest podcast. And if you enjoyed it, then do me a favor and click on that like button down below. And if you really enjoyed it, then I think you should check out the link in the description down below the like button. It's going to take you to the full podcast so you can check out the entire conversation and a whole lot more. If that sounds good, I hope to see you over there. Stay rad, and thanks for watching.